So it is Sunday. I'm going to do a little freelance thing, this afternoon. There's, these companies that they basically, they kind of like pay you to go and, to a certain store, like, and evaluate the service. Sometimes you have to buy something. So I'm going to be doing that in this afternoon. And then we're gonna visit some of my parents' old friends, well, an old friend in particular, and like history sons, all of who like are, I think the youngest one is still minor, but the other two are kind of like adults. Like this man's wife, she passed a few years ago, of cancer, and we're kind of like trying to reach, a hand and see if they need anything, see if things are okay. So that's kind of like what we'll be doing, after I go to the mall and assess the street companies. This time around, like there isn't because sometimes like you get some money for like $100 or something for like doing this research, and then you can kind of like be reimbursed by the things you buy. This time not so much, but the three stores that I have to go and evaluate, so I could get something like there's 120 AI, so I can get something that's around like $40, and I basically have like this stuff for free. And also like I'm not necessarily thinking like I'm gonna find something, but I'm going to make a purchase, because you have to make a purchase, but I'm gonna try to buy something cheap, and then like at some point I'm gonna find something in those stores, and I'm gonna exchange it. So that's kind of like my plan for right now. Oh yeah, by the way, this is my new dress. I got it was pretty much within like the budget that I kind of like have for today. So it's kind of one of those things that like if I had like if I had kind of like waited, I might get this dress for free. But I don't know, I think this is kind of like a good thing for me, because I used to do a lot of this back in 2021. I don't think I've done it since then, and been trying to get into, because like usually they have specific malls or shopping centers they want you to go, and some of them like they're kind of like really far away from home, so I couldn't really go there, because it's not really worth it, because the amount of things that I have to kind of like pay for transportation, because some of those places I need at least two means of transportation, so like it's going to deduct, so it's not really worth it. It would be like me paying to participate in these events, in this kind of like these searches, not search, research. But yeah, that's kind of like what I have for today. And oh yeah, by the way, regarding my novel, I finished like this draft, so now I kind of like I'm gonna go from the start, from like the very beginning. And my goal for this particular draft is that I want to complete everything, because there's a lot of like gaps in between things happening, so I kind of like want to go to finish everything, and that is going to be very daunting, because sometimes you have ideas, sometimes you don't, particularly when it comes to like bridging the gap between two different two different situations, two different things. So this is going to be challenging, potentially more challenging than the last draft. So I'm kind of like trying to be optimistic that I'll be able to do it, but without kind of like pressuring myself too much to get something done. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to go, but I do have high hopes for myself, like concluding things. Also, I'm trying to kind of like work on my perfectionism, because this is just another draft, so I don't have to kind of like have the final words, like the final things. I can kind of like finish this draft and then kind of like work on it again, because something I also kind of like noticed about my writing is that it's being very telling instead of like showing. So like that is also something I will be kind of like paying attention to. Also, I am, I guess, an overwriter, you could say. So basically like there is like too much that has been said, it's a part, but instead of like trying to kind of like cut it down too much, I will be focusing more on kind of like, as I said, completing the chapters, concluding them, and then I'm gonna finish these like wave of writing, and then I'll have like another one and another one. Like that's kind of like my expectation right now, that it's going to be this one and another one at the very least, and then I might get a third one, and then the novel will be kind of like finished, and then I can kind of like move on to the other parts. And I'm still excited about kind of like concluding it. I'm still kind of like hyped up about it, but it does feel like sometimes like it's very insurmountable, because there's all this work to do, and I don't necessarily feel equipped to do it. Not equipped necessarily, but I feel like sometimes, my brain, the juices are not really flowing, so I don't really have a lot of ideas. But it's everything is going to work out in the end, basically. And but yeah, but moving away from that, that is pretty much where I've been kind of like using my energy to. And I am in a really good moment right now, not only mentally, but like work wise, where I have a lot of openings. So I really wish I could produce more, I could write more, because like this is the time for this. Oh yeah, by the way, like in the process, to get like the internship, I think I mentioned it, I have made it to the next phase. So on the 28th, I have to go there at around like 9 or 9:20. I do have it written down, I don't remember it right away. And I'm gonna go there, and there's going to be an interview. This is that's like the third stage. And I don't know what's going to happen, like let's wait and see. But like that is a possibility. But as I said, like while I am I have a lot of free time lately, so I really wish I could be producing more regarding my novel. But I'm not being kind of like pushy with myself. I'm just like, I'm gonna do what I can do. And because I don't want just to finish the novel, I want to enjoy the novel, I want to think that it's good. I want to look back and be like, I'm really proud of myself for not only writing a book, but for also like not only for writing a book, but also for for like putting out something that is good, that the quality is good. So I have to kind of so I'm kind of like at this point right now where I am. I don't know, I think it feels very insurmountable, but at the same time my brain is like, you can do it, we can do this, like it is not a lost cause. And I'm trying to attach myself to that. But that being said, I wanted to talk about my head, because some things have been happening lately. So when you talk about deja vu, sorry, I don't know, I've been having a lot of like these moments lately, and the issue with that is basically because like I know that this is kind of like an effect they have, because you kind of like when your eyes like they go through something, but you don't process. I don't know exactly what it is, but I do know that it is something that happens. That's an explanation for that. But I've been getting kind of, because whenever I'm kind of like a little bit more manic, I really believe that I can see the future. I really believe that there is something there. And I mean, it's normal for many for this to happen. And I'm not manic right now, but I've been getting kind of like there are sometimes some thoughts I'm having, and I'm like, this is insane, but at the same time, like it kind of makes sense. So I've been kind of like really invested in this notion that I can see the future. I know, I mean, like right now I'm fully aware that it's crazy. And as I said, like the issue, I did comment this with my mama, because I said mama. Yeah, I think it's because it's closer to Portuguese, mamãe. But yeah, but I did comment this with her. I did make it. Yeah, I did tell her this, because basically, like like if it gets out of like out of control, then we know that there is like a manic episode coming. But I do think that I'm pretty stable. So there's that. But no, this is something that I feel like I have to tell this to somebody, because it's absolutely fucking insane. But at the same time, my brain's kind of like like there's something here, and there's not. I know, but as I said, my brain is doing the things, and also it's been happening, more often, which is I think why I'm kind of like getting, like these kind of like delusions, because kind of like there's like as I said, like I don't know, there's definitely like it is an interesting thing, because like why does this happen more when I'm manic? Like why does this why is this something that happens? So there like that's probably like a biological explanation, that kind of like correlated to things, but I don't know what it is. I could probably Google it, but I don't know if this specific like is going to they're going to be kind of like a ready answer for it. But yeah, I might search later. But that is kind of like where I am at. I'm kind of also like something that happened lately, because also I think I mentioned this, I got the flu, or maybe a cold. I can't tell the difference, to be completely honest. I mean, I think like a flu is a little harder, like hits you harder. But like apart from that, so I was, I mean, all things considered, I was doing pretty well, because I was sleeping a lot more than I usually do. And because I've been kind of like having more energy, because when I was taking some medication, I don't remember exactly which one it was, I was getting very drowsy throughout the day, so I was sleeping a lot, but it kind of stopped and now it's back. So I kind of like think that has something to do with, you know, like this, you know, illness that kind of like, you know, affected me. But it is interesting for you to, for me to be, because also like eating, I've been sleeping more and eating, which can both be symptoms. Although I will say that sleeping more, like it is something that happens more when I'm depressed, and eating more, I know it also happens when I'm depressed. When I'm manic and when I'm depressed, I eat more. So there is, I mean, sometimes, yeah, like because it is normal that it happens. Although sometimes people, I wish that I had the type of depression where people eat less, because I'll be able to lose some weight if that was the case. Also talking about, you know, losing weight, I increased the dose of the dosage of kind of, you know, like my little, you know, needle thing that I'm doing with Govi, and I don't know if I'm seeing that much of a difference, you know, which kind of sucks because this is expensive, and I was hoping that I would take like a smaller dose, and that it would, because it would last longer, you know, like my needle. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't know what I'm gonna do, because I'm also like not a person losing weight. I'm not gaining weight, which is good, but I want to go back to, you know, like a healthy, you know, like to a healthy weight. Right now I'm like about 10 kilos overweight. 10 or 9. I did kind of like lose like 1 kilo, which I mean it's better than nothing. But you know, I've been able to stay, because you know, like when things were bad, like if I ate too much, I was fluctuating between 75 and 76. And right now, when, you know, the days where I end up like, you know, indulging myself, I'm at 74, and usually at 73, and there were some 72, you know, was also thrown in the mix. So there was, so there's something, I don't know, I have to keep, because this is going to be a slow process, which is what you want. You don't want to lose a lot of weight at once, because then after you're taking the thing that makes you lose weight, you're gonna go back to where you were before and potentially get even more, you know, even fatter. So yeah, so that is kind of like where I am at right now regarding my weight. It's not ideal, but as I said, I'm really attaching myself to the notion that I'm, you know, like, I'm not gaining weight. So like that is already a victory of sorts, because usually it is medication and, you know, these episodes that I have like mixed the two together, and that's pretty much what happened when I put on this weight. So you know, I've been kind of like thinking, so I haven't, you know, it's been like what, 4 or 5 months that I haven't really put on weight. So that is, I said, like that is good, because when you consider that like I changed medication, because the reason why I am struggling right now to lose weight is because medication taking. I started taking, you know, like Wegovy, because you know, like medication was going to make me put on weight, so I was. It's kind of like a preventive measure, and basically in that sense, like I haven't really put on weight. So as I said, like that's a victory in itself, but it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels just like, you know, this is the status quo, and this is going to always be my status quo. So you know, like that's not ideal. But I have, you know, like have somebody, you know, tell me that, you know, maybe I'm not seeing the difference in, you know, like in the scale, but I might be kind of like, my measurements might be kind of like, you know, kind of, I don't know, like they may be kind of like, you know, changing, you know, so I don't know, I didn't measure, you know, at the beginning, so I don't know if that is the case, but it is, yeah, like that's something. I'm just grasping at straws, it feels like, but I'm going to, you know, just stick to my guts. Like I'm, you know, I'm exercising, you know, I'm eating better. I think that I've been able to kind of like reduce the amount of meals I have every day, so like that is good. I think that in some ways also I'm like eating less, you know, in each meal. So if I kind of like keep this up, I will kind of like lose weight. But I will say that regarding my little step stimulating machine, I kind of like, I could be doing more. You know, the reason why I didn't do so much this week is because I was sick and I was getting tired very quickly, and not only getting tired, I was getting like physically, it was just, you know, I was getting physically, you know, incapable of doing it, so I didn't do so much. But right now I feel like I'm better, and I'm, how do I put it, like, I'm doing better. You know, my head is good, you know, like my body is good, and I will go back to my journey, my weight losing journey. But yeah, so that's kind of like all I have to say about that. but I want, to talk about, my head more, because it does feel like I'm making progress in terms of like being less affected by things and being more resilient. I think that things are affecting me less. I'm kind of like putting up with like more stuff, not in a kind of like, because I think that, like there is, when it comes to putting up with things, there are different ways and there are different levels of things that you have to put up with. And I am kind of like, talking about, like if I see something that is being said that isn't correct, like I am talking about it, but I'm even able to remain, because sometimes like when I'm angry, when I'm talking to people, I don't really convey my anger, but I get meaner, like I start saying kind of like mean things, unnecessarily mean things, and that is not ideal. That is not that's not like what I want to do. That's not the person I want to be, because usually this anger, it just hurts me, it just affects me. I end up getting sicker because of it. So I kind of want to, yeah, like I want, like my life, I want a peaceful life, I want peace of mind, and I want, peace all around me. And I basically, if I get angry with things, like that is less likely to happen. So I'm kind of like at this point where, I don't know, I'm kind of like removing myself from like a lot of different situations, and I don't feel bad about it, because for so long I felt like I had to say something, that I had to get involved, and right now I'm more detached, but not in like I numb myself type of way, just in a, like there's no point to this, like this is only going to lead to dissent, it's not going to change anybody's mind, so let me just be here in my corner doing my thing, and basically, well, so there is, like, I don't know. I'm just, I don't know how to properly explain it, but like things are affecting me less. Things are angering me less. I have been started to kind of like accept some scenarios, some situations, and about, the future, about like the worst case scenarios, and I'm withstanding, like that possibility. Like before, that just really made me very hopeless and made me feel very helpless, and that led, to a slippery slope where, it ended with thoughts of like I don't want to be here anymore. So right now I am kind of like accepting things more. So as I said, like I'm more resilient in that way, and that's all I kind of like. That's what I need. It's like this resilience. I don't know how long this is going to last, if it is a temporary thing, but I'm enjoying it as it's happening right now. I'm enjoying, like this journey of like me not being in pain all the time, which was kind of like what's happening. So yeah, so I'm kind of like, I'm seeing things all around me, and I'm not, commenting, I'm not engaging, and not really like that is the way to go, like not engaging, because engaging with things is, it's just, I don't want to say that it exclusively make things worse, but a lot of the time it does. And you start, like start conversations that there's no clear end. You're kind of just, yeah, you end up getting stuck in certain, situations. And honestly, like there's something else that is like I'm not as sharp anymore. Like in terms of like knowing what is happening, like politically speaking, economically speaking, I used to be way more engaged. So when I talked to somebody, like, I had, I had my opinions and I had the facts, and right now I'm not keeping up with that. And honestly, I think that this is kind of like how do I go. I know this is a very privileged position to be in, but, like it's been working for me, and it's, kind of like pretty much, like it's helping my mental health. I'm kind of, yeah, like it is kind of like helping me keep my peace. But yeah, so like basically, these days when like if I were to kind of like talk to somebody about something, I would be really out of the loop, and I think a lot of the conversation would be me getting caught up, but it would not be like in an unbiased way, because people usually they tell things with like their biases, and like their views of the world and all that. So I remember the situation that happened. It was in the Christmas or end of the year celebration in a little cell group that we're going. The whole religious thing that I went through like for a month, and I think that was also a testament to the fact that like I was doing better, because there were things that were being said that I was just like nope. But yeah, but like with the conversation, and basically it was kind of like in a way, and then when I actually went and looked into it, I was like, okay, this makes sense. They're kind of like opposing something, but like because it was the whole thing had to do with like intentions. So like this person did something, and but didn't succeed in doing it. So but they were still kind of like punished for trying to do that. That's kind of like how it works. Like attempted murder. It's not going to be as severe as just as murder, but like you tried it. Like that's kind of like like the thing. But yeah, but the point is that I kind of like heard it from like those people, and they told the story as like as if it like their worldview, as I said. So yeah, but anyway, the point is that because I wasn't aware of things, I couldn't really argue or anything because I was like, okay, I have to look into this. Uh, and yeah, so basically, like as I said, that's pretty much what I mean. Because it's not that I'm like less sharp necessarily. It's just that I'm kind of like not invested, not involved in some things, and that is kind of like this affects my ability to discuss certain things. And the thing is, like, I don't care. Like I want to continue being the way that I've been doing things now. It is. Hold up. Oh, this is the bag that we got from my aunt when she was doing kind of like she did a bazaar, a little shop situation with all the stuff she had, and we got this from there. Because basically, we're paid in clothes and shoes, in stuff that was there. And yeah, so like this bag, I found it the other day because I had like my regular bag that my brother got it for me. So like these two are thrifted, so like good use of. I appreciate that. Like in the things I'm doing, that I'm being kind of like environmentally conscious. It's also good money, and but like that bag, that the small not even a bag, I think would be a purse that I use like all the time. It doesn't go well with certain if I'm wearing something a little fancier. But yeah, so there's no sun here, so I'm just leaving in the sun because it had like that smell of when something has been kind of like stored, for too long. And yeah, so basically what I was trying to say is that I'm not as invested. So it's not even, I know it's not even worth it to kind of like, get engaged in these situations because I'm basically bringing dissent into my life. I'm perfectly fine as I am, and now I'm bringing like this arguments, this conversations that get pretty heated, and yeah, so I'm basically kind of like keeping everything away, and I intend to continue. I know I've been saying like for the longest time that eventually I would go back to kind of like paying attention to certain things, but by now I feel like I'm not, and a part of me feels guilty because I should be more engaged, more responsible. Yeah, it would be like the responsible thing. Should be kind of like caught up in whatever's happening. Although I will say that there's just so much happening all the time. I don't know if necessarily like more things are happening right now. It's just the fact that we have access to these things. We know when they're happening, but like it is undeniably kind of like it is kind of like hard to keep track of things. To kind of yeah, it is to kind of like to be on top of everything. But there are definitely things that you can be on top of. But as I said, like I'm kind of like deciding right now that I think like deep down, like I already made that choice, made that decision by like implicitly, but I would still say like, oh, I'm gonna change. I'm not going to let this get in the way. But right now, yeah, I'm kind of like saying it like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go back to the way things were before because it was really bad for my mental health. And actually what I want is to not be affected by things, and I think that I'm seeing progress in this front, on this front, but it's still like not 100%, and I don't know, like, so ultimately sometimes it feels like things, they feel monumental, they feel like they're going to kind of like really impact the way you live, the way you kind of like do things, but when they pass, they just kind of don't, like you're kind of you're caught up in like all the what ifs, and like sometimes the ifs are not that bad. Naturally, I understand that because of my position of privilege, there's a lot of things that they won't affect me, but they will affect other people. And as I said, it's selfish. I know it's selfish. It is irresponsible and selfish. But for now, like this is what I have. Maybe I'll change my mind at some point. But like this is where I am at. This is where I need to be. And it's kind of like baby steps. So I start to kind of like start to getting more engaged and kind of like learn more of things. As I said, like just some spoonfuls per day. And because it's also like it is a journey, is a transition, and if I just jump right into it, I'm going to overwhelm myself, and things are going to be kind of like bad, because ultimately I want to be alive. I want to live my life, and that means that sometimes I have to make selfish choices, to kind of like stay, to kind of like preserve my pace, to make sure that I don't find myself on any slippery slope that will end with me kind of like no longer having this will for life. So basically, I am making choices, and as I said, like they are irresponsible, they are kind of bad in some ways, but that is at least where I am for the time being, because I have to prioritize myself. I have to put myself first. And it's interesting because technically, like, I've always done this, but it's just because I prioritized what I wanted to do, what I felt like I needed to do. Like those things that were kind of like implicit. They were not really good for me. They were not healthy. But that's pretty much, I was doing what I wanted to do. Naturally, as I said, like the reason why I wanted those things, it's debatable, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with my well-being. But I've always done what I thought was best, or maybe not what I thought was best, but what I felt like I needed to do. And like right now, I truly care about my well-being in a way that I didn't really used to, care when I was younger. Because before I was very like, I'm gonna get my way, or I'm gonna get where I want to get, or I'll die trying. And that's not where I am at right now. I no longer want to kind of like sacrifice my sanity, my well-being, for some not inconsequential, but like it is inconsequential in the sense that I wanted certain things, but I thought I wanted them, but like even if I had gotten them, like I wouldn't be happy because the issues were internal. I had to kind of like address that. So it's kind of like where I am at right now. I'm actually prioritizing my well-being. I'm actually putting myself, not putting myself in a self, because as I said, it feels like I've always put myself first, but like right now I'm putting my well-being first, and that involves making some complicated choices, and having to go through some complex scenarios where I guess like the moral choice would be like different from like what like my well-being calls for. But also I don't intend to kind of like always have this specific type of well-being in place. I really want to get to a point where I'm like even more resilient than I am right now. I think that at this point in time, I am the most resilient I've ever been, and the tendency is only for me to grow stronger. This way it's only for things to kind of like naturally. For example, like this week I was sick, so I was a little bit more tired, like physically and mentally, which meant that I was. There were some things that were feeling kind of like overwhelming, and they hadn't really felt this way, like a week prior. But right now that I'm back, to being kind of like healthy and happy and all of that, like those things, I can handle them, and it's like sometimes it's just like very small things, but they make a difference, because usually there's this cumulative effect where, like it's just like a bunch of like little, I guess like microaggressions that they really pile up, into something, like big, something like into a macroaggression, you could say, or at least like that sensation you have. And I have been able to kind of, those things are not affecting me, as I said before. Those things are not affecting me, and they're not hurting me. They're not leading to like me losing my peace. Naturally, whenever something happens, there's a little bit of you like that is, like that. There's like a little affectation. There's a little something, But in general, it is pretty good. Like I'm just accepting that might be the case, and sometimes like that is all you need, acceptance, because you have to accept also that you can't change the world, because I think this is a huge part of why like I felt so compelled to engage with people, because I really believed that I could change people's minds, but ultimately like people have to be willing to kind of like change for it to be for them, to kind of like change their ways. And a lot of people, I think most people kind of like don't want to do that naturally, like because people change their minds all the time. So like there are people who are changing, but I kind of yeah, so I don't know. I feel like it's very magnanimous of me to just think that like I will be the cog in the machine that is going to change everything, and I don't think that that is me anymore. I don't really have like that type of thought, but it is kind of like worth kind of like examining, because sometimes like that is just your tendency, like you're so used to that being the case that it's kind of like it's almost like I feel like a certain responsibility to kind of like do something, to say something, and I'm doing it more for myself, like more, because that's pretty much what I'm supposed to do, necessarily because I think it's going to lead anywhere. Because as I said, like I think people in general, like they look at me and they assume, what my views are on things. And to be fair, like they are usually somewhat accurate, like they are pretty much what people expect. So I don't know. I feel like I don't even have to say anything. Like I can just exist. And yeah, and I say this because sometimes I'm in scenarios where people they kind of like they clarify things, like what they clarify what they mean to say, and that is pretty much I don't know. It's just like little details here and there. So because this reminds me of because I grew up Christian and more specifically Presbyterian, and there was this thing of like you preach like the gospel, preach like the word, and if necessary use words, because basically it means that like you should kind of like your actions, your behavior, your demeanor should kind of like speak for themselves, and show where you are at, show that like you are you fear God, and that you have Jesus in your heart or something. And I think that this is something that like religiously I've done a lot. I didn't kind of like put my I didn't kind of like clarify certain things because I didn't really want to. But in other areas of my life, I think this is interesting view of like my morality, because like there were certain things that I had to say something, and I say I had to say something, like nobody's forcing me. My head kind of was like, if I didn't say anything, like I would feel kind of like not guilty, but it would kind of like weigh on me. So like when I say something, the weight's lifted, which is why I kind of like I think that like right now things are changing for me, because I feel like there's no longer the same weight. There's still a little bit, affects me. Things affect me a little bit, but yeah, like it's kind of like less, and I think the tendency is for each weight increasingly lesser. But yeah, but basically, I was talking about. So I think that that's kind of like where I am at. I think I'm going to take this principle from my upbringing and apply it to other areas of my life. And also like it's kind of like working in a way, because as I said, people already have like an impression of what I think, and as I said, a lot of times like it is accurate. But yeah, so right now I am like the best I've ever been, which is great. Like this is pretty much what I want for my life. I want maybe not every day, because a day is going to be better, then you have like a bad day, but like the next one can be better. So like I want every week or every month to be better than the last. And so far, like that's been happening, and that's been happening for a while now. And as I said, I had moments, for example, when I got like sick, that I was very much like yeah, like I was feeling a little bit more vulnerable. Things were affecting me more, but then I got healthy again, and then it's no longer something that is kind of like affecting me as much. So yeah, so it's just kind of like, and it's kind of like this scenario. The way I'm doing things is basically when I kind of like I ran like the worst case scenario, as I said, and I just let it. I'm just sitting with it, and the more I kind of like think about it, like the better, the less I care, the less it affects me. Once again, not in a numbing way. I'm not numbing myself as I have done in the past. I'm just keeping things open. I'm just being kind of like open with the whole situation, with my whole situation. I, on the other hand, don't really. Oh, I broke my nail. Okay. Okay, it's still pretty long. I have to get my nails done, and I'm the one who does it. So I just have to. Just because this week I also have like a lot of assignments from college, and I'm doing the writing, and I've been doing some studying of sorts. I'm taking Italian lessons with my dad, and I've been kind of like I'm trying to watch like one video in Italian per day. You know, no like subtitles. I'm going to be you know, like in Italian, you know, but also because I'm watching a lot of stuff on YouTube, so they don't necessarily have subtitles. And also I'm watching from like very small channels, so like they don't have subtitles in English, they have it in Italian. But you know, it's kind of interesting because I have been kind of like understanding more than I expected myself to understand, and I'm really keeping up with that. You know, like my first language is Portuguese and Italian. You know, both are romantic language, but I will say that, for example, when I'm studying French, some things are not as intuitive. You know, like it is kind of harder. Same with Spanish. I mean, at least like the Spanish I've been in contact with, because yeah, it is. Um, I don't know, but so Italian so far has been, you know, the one that is resonating the most with me. Also, I have an Italian citizenship. You know, me, my dad, my brother, and we've got it. Like, you know, we started the whole procedure in 2022. We got it in 2024, and yeah, we should speak the language basically. So like my dad and I, we are kind of like, because my dad has been learning, you know, by himself for, you know, like a while, since before we had the citizenship, you know, since he started like learning. So and also we're taking, you know, like the class, our class is from like 8:30 to, you know, midday, you know, 12 p.m. On Saturdays. And I feel so bad for my dad because, you know, like 2 hours in, like he is already, you know, like tired, and, you know, like not processing things as well. I don't know, because also I think that this whole work situation for him has been very tense lately, so that doesn't help, you know. So he's kind of like struggling to relax. I try to think like, what can I do, you know, to help him, and I don't know. I didn't come up with anything, but you know, I'll keep thinking, you know. And there's moments like this, I just I remember stories from like when he was a kid that he told me, and I just want to give him a hug, and I do, but like that doesn't really accomplish anything. But yeah, but you know, it breaks my heart seeing him, you know, struggling, and I don't know what to do. I don't know if like doing something would make things worse. I don't know, but that is, you know, just something that's been on my mind lately. And because, you know, I start thinking about like what he's feeling and what he's thinking, and I'm just like, that's not the case, you know. Like it's something that sometimes my dad is going to say. He's going to say that, you know, he doesn't say that he did something stupid. He says that he's stupid, and I hate it. I'm like, no, you're not. You're such a competent person. Like there's so many things that you've done in your life, and you know, I feel like, you know, it's so awful for you to reduce yourself to like one thing, that one mistake that you made. So yeah, so I look at him, and I really feel like, you know, sometimes like he is, you know, like he's being too hard on himself, you know, and that just breaks my heart. And I don't know what to do, you know. Also, you know, like he is 62, and I think that the older you get, like the harder sometimes it's for you to change your habits. Not that it's impossible, but you know, it is something that, you know, like it's kind of like harder. It's also kind of like harder for you to kind of like, for example, learn a language when you're older. It's not impossible, as I said, but it is harder. So I don't know if like me kind of like saying something would be kind of like more insult to the injury, or you know, just be kind of like insulting or anything. But yeah, that's kind of like something that's been on my mind. But back to what I was saying before, I have been kind of like doing this little exercise where I sometimes let the worst case scenario linger, you know, and I just sit with that, and it kind of like, you know, the more you think about it, like, you know, like also sometimes I'm using like reassuring words, you know. For example, I'm saying like, this is the scenario, and then I say everything's going to be okay. Scenario, everything's going to be okay. Scenario, everything's going to be okay. And I keep going until I actually believe that, which is interesting because I don't know, people talk about the power of the word, and I grew up as a sadly Christian, so like there was this thing about words having power, you know, like there is like in this religious, you know, context. But you know, like there are, I guess, studies that, you know, like I don't know if it's true, because it's something that, you know, people would say when they were talking about words having power, you know, how it's actually scientifically proven. And I think that, you know, it does, like you do absorb it. So like if you're kind of like being down on yourself, pretty much why I wish my dad would not, you know, say things like, you know, like he's stupid or dumb, because your brain's kind of like absorbing that, and I don't want it. So even if like, so maybe there's like no scientific basis for this, but it's something that I learned, you know, I heard of when I was a kid. And you know, so I'm usually very careful with the way that I say things. I don't say that I'm stupid, even if I'm feeling that way, you know. I try to kind of like translate it to actions, you know. So I did something dumb. That doesn't mean that I'm dumb. It just, mean that I lack the knowledge, or, at the time, like my reasoning wasn't right and all that. And I don't know, this is something that, in a certain way, I sometimes think whether, I became delusional because of that, because I'm not kind of like just pushing myself, um, not being kind of like, mean to myself, so I kind of like, I get delusional. It will happen regardless, that's kind of like how mania works. But it does kind of like make me think, like, yeah, like I think that maybe my whole disposition, my personality is not helping in the situation. But yeah, but I do think that, like, words have power in a sense, and you should, I don't know, like, words of affirmation. I think that right now I'm like, what, like, I see what people are getting with this. I don't do them, particularly because I feel like, because for example, in Portuguese, the verb to be, not in Portuguese, I think in Spanish, in French, like the other romantic languages as well. No, I think in Italian I only have one. But anyway, so the verb to be, like in Portuguese, it translates to two different verbs. One that is a little bit more, is ser and estar. So ser is, like a more, so estar is more like a passing thing. So I am sick. I won't say that, like, eu so sick. I would say eu estou sick, and that being the conjugation. So there is one that is like passing, and then there's one that's more permanent. And I think that I never really attack myself with like things that are permanent. Like I never say something like I am, not I'm stupid, or like I always say something a little bit more like, I did something dumb, I did something stupid, I am, right now kind of like, tired, or I can do this. And I think that might have made a difference. I didn't think so before, but like the more I'm doing this thing now, where I'm just repeating certain notions, and it is working. I'm like, what, like I see where people are coming from. I still think that the words can be a little silly, but I see their use right now. I'm not kind of like, I never really look at people differently for using words of affirmation. It's just something that I thought that never really worked for me. And now I'm like, what, like that is good. Even if what I'm saying is just like, it's going to be okay, I will be okay, I will not suffer, stuff like this. I know I will not suffer, like that is kind of strong, because you will suffer. Life is full of suffering. But it is something that it kind of, I don't know, like I will get through this. It might be a better way. I'll get through the suffering. But I think in the sense of me trying to kind of like really recontextualize things in my head, like it works. Like just me, I will not suffer, because things are going to happen that will make me suffer, but I will not suffer. I think that is the whole, that's pretty much what I'm saying. But yeah, life is going to, it throws curveballs all the time, and you just have to be able to kind of like work with that. And it's interesting because when I think about people and what they think and what they're doing and how they're doing this, like we all have, there's some things I'm pretty neutral on, like I don't really have an opinion, but there are a lot of things that you look at them and you just think that is not like the best way to do that. You kind of like are judging them, not like in a judgmental way, although I'm literally using the word judge, but like you make an assessment of that and just like, what, like I don't know if that is the best way to kind of like go about this. But I do believe that people have to have their own journey. I have made many mistakes in my life, just like everybody else. But I will say that many of these mistakes, I don't regret them so much, because I made them by making choices for myself. Because there's the whole thing of, I think it's a proverb, in the Bible, that it says that, like an intelligent, smart man, intelligent man, learns from his mistakes, and that a wise man learns from other people's mistakes. So I've always had this approach. So it was kind of like the dichotomy here, because on one hand, I wanted to look at things and I wanted to just see like, okay, you made a mistake, I'm going to do things differently. But on the other hand, I wanted to do things my way, which led to me kind of like making mistakes. And but I learned from them, because I think that in the whole thing of like being autonomous and independent, and self-reliant, like being something that is important to me, I think that in this context it was important for me to make those mistakes, because it was only true because I learned through that. Sometimes I didn't learn. I think that right now when I look back, at the past decade, I'm like, okay, I've learned my lessons. But like 5 years ago, like there were many lessons that I did not learn, even though I did go through the situations to teach me to be better than that. But yeah, but like that is just kind of like how life goes. And as I said, like I'm really glad that I was able to make mistakes. I was able to kind of like make mistakes on my own terms, So like, I don't know, because I could have done better. I don't want to go back to the past and think like I wish I had done this differently, because it's already in the past and it's already kind of like way back then. But it does get me thinking of like certain situations, of like how I yeah, just I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't want to think this because there are some things that right now I'm like I could have learned this much sooner. Particularly, I think that's particularly hard because if there is a situation that I only kind of like went through it like last year and then I learned from it, like great. But there are some situations that like I've been through them before and I didn't learn my lesson. And a clear example that I have of this is the whole fantasy thing. Like me fantasizing about things. There are so many things. I really stuck to fantasy. That I mentioned before. I had this fantasy from like when I was 11 to when I was 21. It was like a decade of me having that fantasy and it just growing and festering and just, getting in the way of like me properly developing in some ways. And throughout, the entirety of that decade, I could have changed at any point in time. But I'm stubborn, so like I wouldn't have necessarily changed, but like that is a possibility. And the thing is that I made a lot of like bad calls because of like that, because I was stuck in those fantasies. Like I could have started my life sooner, you could say, if I had like let go of these fantasies, but I didn't. And as I said, like I'm glad that I was able to do things on my own terms. But I'm just thinking, like, if I was what if I was 21? Because that's the thing, after that fantasy other fantasies came along. So if I were 21 and I had let go of that fantasy, if I had gone, because that's the thing, I was in therapy, it's just that there were so many layers of things that I had to get through. And yeah, I'm just a very stubborn person. It's interesting because like stubbornness is something that I have at different points in time prided myself in. And right now I'm just like, it's just like I'm a naturally stubborn person, and that is going to be kind of like something that that's going to be with me till the day I die. But I can make sure that like my stubbornness doesn't lead to mistakes, doesn't lead to like me repeating certain cycles. And that is all that I kind of like want from that right now. I don't have to change that way, because I think my stubbornness can be something positive. Like it can make me a more resilient person. It can make me I think it's also like part of my sense of self, because as I said before, independence, autonomy, self-reliance, like those are all very important to me. Those are traits that like I want them to be kind of like central in a certain way in the way I live my life, which doesn't mean that I cannot really rely on people. That is kind of like something that it took me years to realize, not to realize because I think I noticed that before, but like accepting it, getting to a point where I'm like accepting help from people. That was something which is kind of like really weird. It's kind of like it's strange because I did rely on people before, but I think I did so like very begrudgingly, and that made me kind of like look down at myself. Like I was just like judging myself for kind of like needing help, which I kind of like did. And life is good. Like life is at a point right now where I think I kind of like things are very adjusted. Like I'm at a point where I am yeah, like things have kind of like adjusted to the best way possible, and I'm just here living my life and reaping the fruit. Something that an aunt of mine said. She this is something religious, because she is religious, but she's saying that like that she's very grateful to God, because she and her husband, my uncle, they have been reaping the benefits of things they didn't sow. Like they haven't really kind of like laid the foundation for the blessings they have right now. And it's interesting because I've always she said that once like she said a couple of times, but like in one situation, and it kind of like gets me thinking like, why am I so because as I said, like I grew up Christian, so some of my values like they're still like it makes sense, like they make sense in the context of like me being religious, me not being religious, being embraced religious, because there are things that I think from like any religion that they can be kind of like positive, which is in itself a development for my part, because I was so anti-religion for so long because of all the wounds that I had from like being brought up in like that context and not fitting into the mold that they wanted me to fit into. So I was I have like a little I don't know if you can see. Yeah, I have like all of this covering all over my body, and my doctor, she prescribed me like a little, paste thing, and I'm kind of like, applying it, but it is not helping. And this one is new, so I'm going to start. And there's also one here. Okay, it's not that it needs moisture, because like I moisturize like every day, after a shower. So I don't know what exactly this is, but back to my inside. So right now I'm like, am I reaping the benefits of what I did? So because I worked, because that's the thing, like I worked hard on things, but like they were not. It feels like I'm working like one area of my life, and I'm having benefits in this area. So it's kind of like, I didn't necessarily sow this. So am I getting my blessings, from what I didn't sow? Which is the thing of like grace and mercy, right? Because mercy is you not having, not getting what you deserve, but in the sense of like you deserve a punishment, so you don't get a punishment. And grace is you receiving what you don't deserve, but in the sense of like a blessing. And as I said, like this is a concept that right now my life's been pretty good. Yeah, my life's been pretty good lately. I'm pretty stable. I'm able to do things. I'm able to kind of like everything's working out, pretty well for me. So it just gets me like, I don't know, I'm not thinking like, do I deserve this? Because I don't think there's like a higher power defining that. But I will say that it feels so weird after so long of me really suffering to get like to be in a stable position, for me to finally be here, and things working out. It just feels weird sometimes. It feels like and once again, I don't know, like I feel like for you to deserve something, it has to be kind of like an active thing, not so much a passive thing. Although you could argue that like you're going to sow, you're going to reap nothing if you sow nothing. So there's that like idea. But in terms of in terms of like you being on the receiving end of things, you have to do something. So just being passive and not doing anything, and then you can get something. And then, but also there's this whole thing of like, what does it mean for you to kind of like what exactly does it mean for you to do something? Because as I said, I feel like I'm seeing improvement in my life, and at the same time I am kind of I know I'm seeing improvements in my life. And I feel like, but like I didn't put in the effort. Like for example, like therapy is a good example. Like I went there. So like my stability right now, like there is an element of like I put in the effort, and I'm having reaping the benefits of being stable. Naturally, there's also like medication. So I like going to the doctor. Like I mean, it's kind of passive. You're just taking the medication. But I don't know. The point I am trying to make is that sometimes things not just sometimes, but like lately a lot of memories have been coming back to me of things that have been said, and things that I have witnessed, things that I've done, and it's I don't know, like I'm very reminiscent, I guess. And I think in a lot of ways I look back, and it's pretty, I know I'm doing pretty well, and it's kind of crazy, because I'm remembering like things such as this thing that my aunt said, but I'm also remembering times when things didn't work out, like times when like I was kind of like a passive observer, not so much an active player. And I don't know, just like lots of wisdom being imparted here and there. And sometimes like it takes a while for you to get to a point where you really absorb that, you really kind of like take it into consideration, because I think you have to live like your life, and you have to go through some situations, some you have to kind of like be under different circumstances for you to appreciate what has been said, and what has been done. And I think I'm at a very appreciative point where I'm just looking at things, and I'm just like, I'm grateful. And I continue doing the gratitude thing that I said, although I will say that sometimes I slack off a little bit. It's not that I'm ungrateful, it's just that I don't have like this moment where I'm looking around and I'm like being thankful for things that are happening in my life. And once again, nothing wrong with kind of like forgetting, which I think that's kind of like the case. And also, as I said, like this past week I've been really weak physically, so, and also like mentally I've been very weak, like maybe weak is not the right word, very tired. So you kind of like just go through the motions without dispensing the right amount of energy into like whatever you're doing. You're not really thinking, you're just, like I said, going through the motions, and that's fine. Like life is going to be like that sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, you don't have to kind of like judge yourself for that. And honestly, I'm trying to be kind of like kinder towards myself. I mean, I've been technically trying to be kinder to myself since the dawn, since I have been existing. And I do have moments of delusion, and it doesn't help when I get manic. But like it is interesting. I was thinking about, I remember one specific manic episode from when I was from 2017, and I had other episodes, but like I remember like the feeling of like being there, and it's crazy because it's me, and I was being very much delusional, like the megalomania was really running free in my head, and I don't know, I remember the feeling of like that happening, and just having full confidence that you're gonna get there, at that point that I was aiming for. And it is interesting because none of that has come true, and also like I don't think any of that is going to come true ever. Also because like I'm looking for other things, like I'm kind of like like my priorities have changed, my desires have changed, my ambitions have changed, but I was so confident that that was going to happen, and I think that this is something that happened before, when in 2016, 2015, 2014. I remember that the first manic episode that I remember having, I was 14. No, I was in 2014. I was 16 or 17, because it was in this school trip to Germany, and I turned 17 in the trip. So I don't know if this was like before or after. I think it was before, because we had an event that we attended, and then we had the visits. But yeah, so I was like 16 to 17, and it's kind of like great. Like the feeling of being manic is amazing. Like there's no way around it. It feels great because you're just full of confidence and you have no fear. So everything is great, and you just know what you're doing, even though you don't know what you're doing. But you kind of like have the certainty. And I remember, as I said, so I remember that feeling, and then I remember this other feeling. And sometimes it's kind of like it's very counterintuitive, but a part of me feels like I need that boost, because it was through manic episodes that I kind of like finished my first book. It was through manic, and the second one as well. Like that's pretty much when I was able to make a lot of progress. So it's kind of crazy, because a part of me is like, I really wish I could get manic, because it is just like the inspiration, like you have ideas, and you have solutions. Like nothing is a problem, like you have a solution for everything, and like I don't know. So I don't want to get manic, because like mania comes with depression, and also like mania comes with risky behavior that I don't wanna condone. I don't wanna endure, because it's not like it's not productive. That's why like when you're kind of like, because like you're normal, and then you have kind of like this hypomania state that goes to mania, and basically like this state, hypomania, you can kind of like be productive and still a functional human being. When you get to mania, like that is all off the window. So I was kind of like, as I said, I remember this episode from 2017, and I was fantasizing like crazy, and my blood was rushing, and then I was kind of like really feeling, I feel amazing, like that's again no way around it. Like it feels good. Naturally, like the things that can happen, very counterproductive, particularly when I think about for example, like where I'm, like my college, the building, it is very open, so if you have the fourth floor, there are so many different ways that you, for example, you could jump from there. And naturally, like the jumping, you think that is associated with depression. But I'm remembering another manic episode that I have back when I was in college. So this was 2019, and I just kind of climbed through a window. And I think sometimes like you can really believe that you can fly when you're that manic. So anyway, so the point is that I don't want to get an episode, because that would just derail everything. I want to continue being stable, but there's still a little taste of it, like there's still a little something, and that's kind of like hard to ignore. And there's nothing, I mean technically there's nothing you can do when you get manic. It's just that sometimes it takes the medication, sometimes to kind of like start working. And Oh my god, I just remember where there's this classmate of mine, and he reminds me of somebody. Just realized it reminds me of my old doctor, the ones that I haven't really been going to, and that's that. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm in a really good place mentally. I want this week to be, like a week where I can work on my novel. And as I said, I'm in this, part where where like I have to connect all the dots, and that's going to be hard. But as I said, like I'm trying to be less less of a perfectionist when it comes to the novel, because like if I just like it doesn't, because I'm gonna go through it again. So we just have to connect things. It doesn't have to be the best connections. It doesn't have to be kind of like the most it can be a little nonsensical is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's it. Bye.